Hello everyone, back for another video. The purpose of this video is to give you a little bit of a helping hand with learning APA 7th edition. Now APA 7th edition is something that frightens a lot of people, but it's my goal that by the end of this video, you'll feel pretty comfortable both with what it is and how to actually incorporate it. And specifically to achieve that purpose, I'm going to go over three main points, the U tries from my in-person classes. But I'm going to give you an idea of the purpose of APA, why it matters that we learn this. I'm going to teach you about in-text citations and then references page, as well as how those two things are different from one another. Now, specifically, I've always found before I jump into something that's rough, it helps me to know why I'm doing it in the first place. APA is exactly that. It is a pain in the butt. It's hard. It takes time. So why the heck are we learning this? And there are actually a couple good reasons which help make the suffering a little bit less. So as you're seeing on the slide here, APA is meant to help us know how to organize our ideas, whether it be a speech, whether it be a paper. APA's purpose is to help us know how to take care of all the little things rather than spending time stressing on those. We can spend time thinking about the big ideas, the arguments we want to make, how we want to design the stuff that we're doing. So APA, in other words, helps us to, one, focus on ideas rather than formatting, rather than wondering how your paper should look. There's already rules to help you know just how to do that. But two, and this is the part that I find most helpful, is with everybody doing the exact same thing, i.e. all of you organizing your papers and your speeches using the same rules, that means anybody that then read all of those papers would read the exact same pattern for argumentation, for formatting, etc. The problem with, for instance, like teaching, is when I get papers and there are no rules established, if I have 22 people in a class, I get 22 different versions of what people think a paper should be. With something like APA, though, every paper becomes the exact same style, the exact same structure, the arguments and the way that they cite things are cited in the same way. That makes it a lot easier to sift through information. And that's not just a benefit for me as your teacher, but when you go out into the real world, APA is actually used in a lot of major associations and workplaces because it's handy, it's simple. And so APA allows you, as you go out and create work in your professional lives, to be able to have an easier time structuring everything. But beautifully, it also helps you when you have to then go out and read other people's work rather than trying to figure out, okay, what are they trying to do here? Where do I look to see what they actually did? What are their arguments? How do I know if they found what they said they were going to find? You know that every single APA paper is organized with an introduction. It goes into a literature review. It gives a rationale. It moves into a method section that says what they plan to do. It gives you the results of what they found. And then it gives a discussion of what this all means every single time, with everything cited the exact same way. It saves us over the course of our lives hours upon hours of not having to familiarize ourselves with a person's thinking process, but rather we can just take shortcuts to know exactly what we need to look for and where to find the information we personally need for our own projects. So APA, as much as it takes a little bit of time to learn now, is going to save you a lot of headache later on in your life, which is an awesome thing to know. Another smaller thing is just to remember that because we're doing this, it's helping us to know how to cite information in other people's work to, one, give them credit because they deserve it, but two, it keeps us out of trouble and we don't end up getting in trouble for stealing other people's work by not giving credit where credit's due. So that's APA and the why. Let's talk about the hows. And again, I'm going to break this into two parts. Citing research is going to go inside your paper. When I talk about in-text citations, I'm referring to everything that takes place in your paper until the very end where you have a references section. The second thing we'll cover is the references section, which is how do you actually format your references at the end of the paper to help guide people. So we'll get to both of those things momentarily, but really quick, one fast discussion, we're talking about citing, we're talking about referencing everything. What should you actually cite? What should you have to cite and what should you not have to cite? And the easy answer I'm going to give you for the intents of this video, until you're comfortable and understand what it means not to have to cite common knowledge, cite everything. Cite any statistics, cite any claim that you take from somebody else, just to make sure that you keep yourself safe. But if you want the little bit more extended answer, anytime you give an example, statistic, a testimonial, you should be citing that. Anytime you talk about something somebody said in an interview or they quoted, you should cite that. Nobody knows off the top of their head that 97% of students like humor in a classroom, for instance. Nobody just knows that. Somebody had to go out and do work to find out that answer. And so anytime work is involved, you want to cite the person who did it. However, it doesn't really take anybody any form of work to look outside and say, oh, the sky is blue. You wouldn't need to cite the sky is blue, but you would need to cite 97% of people like humor, if that makes sense. So for now, until you feel comfortable, cite everything to keep yourself safe and out of trouble. Now, one more important thing to know is the difference between direct quotations and paraphrasing. You have two choices when you cite people. You can choose to cite somebody word for word, exactly everything they said. That's called direct quoting. The other hand, you can cite somebody by paraphrasing them. So for instance, if you interviewed me and I was talking about toast, just for a fun, easy example, and McKay West said, I like toast. A direct quote of that would be West, 2022, said he likes toast, or said, I like toast. That would be a direct quotation. Paraphrasing, on the other hand, is when you keep the person's original intention of what they meant in their message, and you use your own words to help understand what the person said. So instead of saying McKay West said, I like toast, which is a direct quote, paraphrasing would sound like, oh, in talking with West, 2022, he referred to how much he enjoys a piece of toast. Not quite the same thing I said, but the same meaning and intention. Now, something for you to consider is which one of these is better. The important answer is to know that they're both good, both keep you out of trouble, but if you want to do the best work that you can that will make you most credible for your readers and viewers, you're going to want to paraphrase more often. And the reason for that is this shows that you can put a complex topic or somebody else's work into your own words. In order to do that means you have to know what it is in the first place. It shows that you understand what you're doing. Okay, but two, it also helps us know that you do actually know and that you're not just directly quoting somebody because you don't understand what they're saying. With students, a lot of times they will directly quote things from work because they know it's somewhat important. It helps their argument, but they really don't quite know what it actually means. So they directly quote it to cover their basis and put something smart sounding. It's a lot more credibility enhancing for you to show that you can paraphrase a source and put things into your own words. It also makes the information fit your paper or speech a lot better, as opposed to awkward language where you have to go in and say, they said, insert their quote that doesn't match the speed and rhythm of your presentation. Paraphrasing is more natural and it helps build your credibility. So I would shoot for that one over direct quotations. So moving forward then, in-text citations. These specifically are in your paper or in your speech, okay? These are what are happening while you are talking or making your argument. An important thing to know with in-text citations are these are the short little note you make to simply tell people there is research to support the claim you are making. Okay, so in case in point, if in my paper I was talking about Baker and Sutherland and their research in 2017, for instance, well, that's a simple way to say that. Hey, I want to tell you that humor was found to be good for learning. That's not what they found, but just off the top of my head. Well, Baker and Sutherland 2017 found humor was related to learning. That says humor related to learning has a scientific source to support the claim that I'm making. That's all an in-text citation is. You are really literally using the last names of the author and the year to simply say research exists to support this. That's largely what an in-text citation is. Now, over the course of the next few slides, I'm just mean to show you that there's different ways that you can go about doing this to offer you flexibility in how you write it in a paper or on a speech. But the big takeaway is in text, last name, year are the two pieces of information that you need to use. If you use them in sentence, meaning it's part of what you actually say in a paper, you would write out and. But if you're not using it in the actual sentence and you put it after your sentence, for instance, in the second line here, research shows people love smiling. That's the end of our sentence, but you want to put a source to support this claim. You actually would not use the and sign at all. You just use the last name, comma, year. Or if there were two authors, you would put the ampersand sign, just like that. And some of you know it as the and sign, if that helps. Okay, couple rules to make this easier, because remember, we're trying to make this easy for our readers and for ourselves. The reason we have these rules is to make things easier. To make it easier, one, we always keep our last name and our year together. You don't want to say, for instance, Baker found blah, 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 2017. Maybe you ended up wanting to use a couple sources. Baker found blah, 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 and West found blah, 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 2017, 2019. Well, that becomes confusing pretty quick. Who did this in 2017? Who did this in 2019? We want to keep the year and the author together, always right next to each other, to prevent confusion for our readers. Okay, if you have multiple authors, again, if you're in your actual sentence you're using, spell out the word and, because it's your sentence. We don't use texting language in our sentences. But if it's after the sentence, we actually do use the texting language, the ampersand sign. And that is actually a practical reason of we just try to keep our text shorter for the big publications we have. When you start writing 20, 30 pages of citations in a research study, those extra 2 or 3 letters, they count. And so we try to reduce them just to make it easier and less suffering for everybody involved. But if you're in your sentence, to be grammatically correct, use the and sign. Now, if you have an article that doesn't have an author, we use the first 3 words of the article's name in place of the author. Now, a quick pro tip I would give you, I would recommend not doing a lot of this, because if you're finding a source that doesn't have somebody who's willing to put their name up as an author, that should tell you a little bit about the potential credibility of that source. The person's not confident enough in their own work to put their name on it. So do you really want to use it? But if you do, this would be how you do it. Okay, other small questions students tend to have. Well, what if there are multiple authors? Okay, and I've shown you 2 authors, ampersand sign after a sentence, or if you're in the middle of a sentence, use the and sign. But what if there's 3 or more authors? Well, luckily for us, with 7th edition, APA has made this really easy. You put the first name's author, spell it out, and then you put et al. Make sure you have a period that says this all is abbreviated, and then a comma to separate your year. If you were in a sentence, you don't have to put the comma because we're not separating the year. You would just say Baker et al. And in parentheses, the year. We don't need to say et al. Let me take that back. The et al. Stands for all the other authors. In other words, it's basically saying, and all the rest of everybody. So we do need to say the et al. We don't need to say all of the other people's names. So this stands for 3 authors. This stands for as many authors after 3 as there could be. So if it's Baker, West, Kronka, Wilson, Baker et al. And we'll just take care of all the other people with the et al. To make our lives easier. Okay, so don't panic when you see all these X's here. The idea is to show you some of the flexibility of how you can write this out in a sentence structure. You can begin your sentence with a name and a citation. So Baker 2017 found blah, blah, blah. You can put it at the end of the sentence. Oh, humor was found to be related to learning, says Baker 2017, just as a note at the end of sentence. You can have multiple authors where you go back and forth. Well, West et al. 2019 found humor increased learning. However, Baker 2017 also found this, end of the sentence. And as we jump back to West et al., we'll just put his name again at the end of the next finding. Anytime you jump between authors, multiple studies, you'll always want to make sure you use both the last name and the year together. However, if you constantly keep using one source, so let's say we're using West et al., and the whole paragraph's about West et al., you really only need to put the year after the very first time that you say West et al. After that, to make things easier, we just take out the 2019. But if you did throw somebody else in between the two Wests, you would want a year with both of them, okay, to make sure we're being very specific and accurate with who did what. Again, all of this to make it easier for our readers to know who said what and when. Okay, and lastly, if you had multiple studies that all said the same thing, so let's say, for instance, that Baker, West, and Martin 2017 all found humor led to learning. Well, you could put them all in what we call a string citation, where you give all of them, Baker, comma, 2017, and you simply separate each individual study by a semicolon. Semicolon symbolizes this is the end of this study's names and information. You'll notice that this also gets alphabetized. So even though Martin might be 2019 or 2020 or whatever, because it's Martin's his last name, you would put Baker first because alphabetically it just is more appealing to us. We're used to it. So organized by the last name, not by the year. There's your variety. That is all the different ways that you can in-text cite somebody. So use different forms, practice, experiment, try it, and see how you can use different ways of citing something to help make your arguments make more sense for an audience to back up the things that you're saying. Okay, that's in-text citations. In-text citations is all the stuff we're doing in our paper, and we try to keep it short because we don't want a 35-page paper where 5 pages of that is just simply citations. We try to clean it up and make it as simple for ourselves and our reader as possible. References, on the other hand, a reference page comes at the end of your paper, at the end of your speech. And the idea here is that you provide one single time that you provide all of the information about a source or a reference to help somebody find where they would go to get that source if they wanted to read it themselves. We wouldn't want to give all this information every single time we said it in our paper, because then our paper becomes 100 pages long pretty quick. One time at the end is where we put all of the information. In-text citations, however, are simply last name, comma, year, and they tell us where in the references page to look. Okay, so as we look into what makes up a reference page, there's a few rules you need to follow. Number one, you need it to be double spaced. Okay, helps it look a little nicer, a little bit cleaner. Number two, you need to provide hanging indents. To show you what this means, this is the extra little bit of space here between the first line of text and any lines after that that are still part of the same source. So you'll notice when there isn't extra lines, you just have the next source equally spaced out. But if the source carries on to a second line, you provide just a little bit of text. That is a visual distinction simply to make the reader's life easier to know where one source starts and where one source ends. Another thing to know with the reference page is to alphabetize the reference page by last names. So again, I'll come here to this. You'll notice it goes A, C, G down the line. An important note here, though, is you don't organize the names horizontally by alphabetize. So even though scoria here would technically come before crossly if we alphabetize them, the order horizontal is actually important. What the order this way means is that crossly actually did more work on the paper than did Coria or the project or whatever. So if you actually put Coria in front of crossly to alphabetize this way, what you're saying is Coria did much more work, which is not true. So an important distinction is to keep the names the same, horizontal, but alphabetize them in the reference sheet vertically to make it easier for your audience to be able to sift through your information. Okay, Another quick tip I will give you is avoid blogs and random websites. And the simple answer I'll give you for this video is because a lot of times they're not very credible. You don't want to be quoting Skaterboy818 to defend yourself. It just never looks good. Okay, and then lastly, you only cite things in your reference page that you actually used in your paper or your speech. So you may have looked at other stuff, and English teachers, annotated bibliographies, you're often taught cite everything, put them everywhere. But in APA, we don't do that. We only provide information for the things we actually talk about in our paper. So if you don't have a source in your paper, it would not go on your reference page. Okay, and the same logic for a speech. So really quick, because I've been showing you the sample reference page, one thing I would like to mention before I start getting into the in-depth part of references is if you come down to the bottom of our list of modules in Canvas, and this is for any course that I teach that has APA involved, you will always find an APA help module. And if you open it up, you'll find a few different things in it. In this case, I have answers because this is an in-person class. I'm going to give them a worksheet. But what you'll always find is a cheat sheet, a cover page, and a reference page. If you click the cheat sheet, you're going to have a simple, short, easy way to remember all the stuff that I've provided in this video. So you're going to see all these things over the next few minutes of this video. But we have already talked about in-text citations, and here's a short summary of all the rules that I've covered in the video so far. See all those beautiful little X's? So that cheat sheet's there. Please download it, use it in your life, take it with you to help you save time on your APA in the future. That's the cheat sheet, okay? I've also provided a cover page and a reference page so that you can simply use these in your papers or work that you do in your other classes. You can download this, you can literally cut and copy this paper right here, and this would be how your title page would be organized. And similar, after we talk about references, you'll be able to use this and you can refer back to it to see what a reference page should look like by the time you're done. Those are two resources I provide to you to simply make it a little easier for you as you're learning APA for the first time. Again, that is an APA help module at the bottom of our Canvas modules. So finally, okay, I have quite a few slides here over the next few bits of different types. I'm not going to spend time over those in this video, okay? Rather, what I want to do is teach you a simple way to understand why references look the way that they do, okay? Because when you get something that looks like, oh, for instance, this becomes intimidating. What am I supposed to say? When? Where? What the heck is a DOI? That's a lot, especially for a first time. So rather, I want you to think of a reference as a single sentence or series of sentences that you write to help an audience member or reader find the resource that they want to find that you've told them about. So to do that, we break up every reference into a series of sentences. Sentence number one is the author sentence. You provide a person's last name, so in this case, West, comma, because commas are used to say a sentence isn't done. So West, comma, first initial, period. The period says we're abbreviating that first name. And if they didn't have a middle name, this would actually be the end of the author sentence. So the period also symbolizes this sentence is done. However, if they have a middle name, you'll also put their middle initial and period. Period. Our sentence is done. You start every sentence with a capital letter, you end every sentence with a period, right? So first sentence, author, complete. The second one's the hardest sentence, the year. All you do is in parentheses, put the year, 1999, 2019. And when you're done, put a period to say that sentence is done. The title of the article is our article sentence. So you find an article, in this case, I'll just use this one here, Students' Perceptions of Instructor Appropriateness and Humor Homophily. I would word for word type that out. And when I was done, I would put a period. Now a quick note here, you'll notice title is capitalized, article is not. In a sentence, we only capitalize the first letter in the sentence, right? The same logic applies for writing a reference. Simply capitalize the first letter and we don't care about all the other stuff, except under one rule, if a pronoun is used. So names of places, names of people, names of areas. If there's a name, you would capitalize the name like general English grammatical rules, but otherwise everything is lowercase except for the first letter. Okay, period. That sentence is done. Next is our title of journal, and you'll notice this one's a little bit longer. Every article that is an academic article is generally found in a journal. The journal is a bigger collection of work, excuse me, that has a lot of articles. So one journal has a lot of articles. So to help our reader or our audience member find the thing we're talking about, we give them a little bit more information so they can find the exact article that we used. So the journal, for instance, might be the Journal of Communication. Okay, so we would put that first. You'll notice that it's italicized, and you'll notice that the capital letters actually go, everything here is capitalized other than your smaller prepositions. And the best reason I have for this one, and I'm going to be honest, I think it's kind of a silly rule, but I think it's because it's the largest work, much like you would capitalize all the stuff in a book in different formats of English language. The same thing here. The journal's the big work, so we capitalize all the big important words. Now, notice when we get done with the title of the journal, we actually have a comma here. We're not done. There's more to finding an article in a journal. You need the title of the journal, but once you find the journal, what volume is it? Many journals have various publications that come out every year. There might be like 3 issues that came out that year. So what volume? What year? Is it volume 2019? Is it volume 2012? Is it volume 3, which tells us it came out in 2014? You simply provide the volume number that your article came from. You don't need to write VOL or anything like that. You just simply give the number. Volume 3, write a 3. Now, one very little distinction here, it's so stupid, but I'm going to make sure you know it, is notice that everything is italicized until this comma. You italicize the number here for volume. You do not italicize the comma that comes after this. And I think the best explanation I have for this is it's because people lazily just want to drag over, and they know that this is supposed to be italicized, but this isn't. So they drag over until the volume number and they italicize it, but they leave the comma so that this stuff is not. That's the best I got for you on that one. This comma and everything after it is not italicized, but everything before it for the journal is. Lastly, you have page numbers. You don't need X's. You simply put 67 through 89. Period. Our sentence is done. Now everybody has exactly what they need in the journal to find this article. Now the last sentence that's been added since computers and technology have advanced is we have our DOI sentence. Now the DOI stands for, I believe, Digital Object Identifier. In other words, every single article that you read has a unique URL and number specifically tied to that article to help us find it easier. It's a very simple way to find information. And so what you do is every single time you have a DOI, you put https://doi.org/. Okay. After that, you simply provide the number. Now this may be number, it may have some letters in it. I don't know what that looks like. Every article is unique. I'll show you where to find it in just one moment. But ultimately, when you have all this information, everybody now has everything they need to find your article if they wanted to. And so it starts to look like this. Okay, and I'm actually going to show you this article exactly in one moment. But here I have last name, comma, first name, initial, middle name, initial, comma. This comma here, which is that slide I just skipped, if you have more than one author, the only thing that changes is your sentence, or your author sentence. There's more authors, so we add them. So we put a comma after each author until we get to the last one. And that comma symbolizes there's more authors, so our sentence is not done. So this logic applies for 2 authors. It applies for 10 authors. So West, comma, M dot S dot, comma, there's one more author, and Martin, comma, M period, M period. There's our 2 authors. And it starts to look like that. Now, if there were 3 authors, it would be West all the way to the S, comma. You wouldn't use the ampersand sign just yet because we still have a second author, comma, and then you would put the third author's information, and the ampersand sign would go before the third author. The ampersand goes before whatever person is the final author in that string of authors. So you only use it one time. Other than that, whether you have 2 authors or 20, this logic applies for how to cite authors in APA 7th edition. So here's our author sentence. Here's our year sentence. Here is our title of the article sentence. Here is our journal sentence. And here's our DOI sentence. Now, one final thing I'll show you before I end this video is where do you actually find all this information when you have an article? So here is our article. Most articles you'll find they'll have some kind of page like this, or you'll get something that looks like this. In either case, you'll find that most of that information is actually present right here. You'll notice that my name's fully spelled out right here, which is not APA, so be careful. They're giving you this as a shortcut that you can copy and paste in, but you'll need to fix up the citation in order to make sure that it's proper APA 7th edition style. Okay, but there's all the information you would need with a few minor corrections. If you only get a page that looks like this, however, you still have all the information you need. For instance, here's your authors. Here is the year that it came out. Here is the title of the article. Here is the title of the journal. Here's the volume number. Here's the page numbers. And there is the DOI. So you have everything you need usually on the first page of an article. Now, one last little tip. What if you have something like a book? You're looking at an AP or a academic article. I just want to point out that notice the structure of the sentences is largely the same. Sentence, year, title of the thing, and there's just a little bit different stuff for book. They have like a publisher. That would be kind of like a journal if we had an academic article. And we don't have DOIs for books. They don't have them, so that sentence doesn't exist. If we skip to an online newspaper, we have our author sentence, our year. We give an exact date just because newspapers publish daily, weekly. What day did it happen? Title of the thing and the website's name. If you pull from a website, like let's just say sarahb.net, well, if it has an author for that article you're citing, sentence, date, title of the article, where did the website come from? The structure is the same. If you understand the basic way to build an APA reference, you understand how to cite most everything that you'll ever have to cite in your life. The only thing you'll notice I have this be wary here with websites, be careful with websites because a lot of times they're uncredible. Anybody can make them. It's not to say that all of them are bad. Just be careful because again, you don't want Skaterboy 818 to be the one making up the majority of what you're using to defend yourself. Okay, so with that, our summary. You've made it through this video. A couple quick notes and final takeaways. The whole point of me teaching you this is fourfold. Number one, you need to know the purpose of APA, and that purpose is making our lives easier. APA is a pain in the butt at first, but once you get good at it, it's actually really helpful to save you time in writing your own stuff and in reading other people's stuff. As far as what should you cite, cite everything until you feel better about what it is you need to do. In-text citations are the stuff you do in your actual speech or paper to help people know what you're citing, to help them know that information's there to support you, and to tell them where in your references page at the end to look at to find stuff if they want to find it later on their own. The references page, however, is where they actually use that to find the source out in the real world. If these 4 points make sense to you, you now know more APA than most people in the world, and congratulations. As a quick final note, thank you for taking the time to be willing to listen to this. I hope it helped. And if it helped a lot, but at the same time you still have a couple questions, please know I'm here for you. Reach out to me. I'd love to help answer any last lingering questions you might have. And so with that, I wish you all the best of luck with your APA ventures, and have a good day.